Welcome to Farm Year Daily, a field forward podcast. I'm David Geiger, your host. I've been on Iowa TV and radio for the last decade, and I am excited to join you on this new podcast, Farm Year Daily. Today on the program, we'll cover some of the national initiatives going on with Jay Schutte, a board member of the National Corn Growers Association. Then we take a look at Central Iowa fields with ISU Extension agronomist Meaghan Anderson. Please be sure to like and follow the podcast as well as our social media at Field Forward Pod. We would love to have you join our community, making sure folks in Iowa are informed about what is affecting our farmers. This is Farm Year Daily. And we are speaking with Jay Schutte with the National Corn Growers Association, also a Missouri corn farmer. Jay, thank you so much for joining. And before we get started, can you give us a little bit of a crop update of what's going on in your area?
Well, we have had a very wet spring. I just got done planting corn yesterday evening about 6 o'clock. And we've got a big rain coming at us. I've heard anywhere from 3.8 to 4.5 inches coming at us. I'm just hoping we don't get washed out.
Absolutely. Hopefully you get a nice smooth drizzle that kind of helps out the crop for sure. Last week, we kicked off summer driving season as well. It's June 1st, and that is EPA's summer E15 waiver going into effect. Can you talk a little bit about that and why it's important to farmers?
Well, the E15 waiver is just for 8 states. Missouri is one of them, and they're all in the Midwest. And it just allows for year-round E15 sales. Generally, E15 sales are not allowed for anything other than a flex fuel vehicle during the summer months. So hopefully this will, it's one less barrier for the retailers to put E15 out in the pumps, and hopefully we will produce more ethanol and market more ethanol and help out demand for corn.
How does that work with trying to make sure E15 is available year-round?
It's going to make it much easier for the blenders because they won't have to go from E10 blend to an E15 and back, and it will make it they'll be more inclined to keep it on the rack all the time so that the retailers can purchase it. It's just one less market hurdle.
Now, Missouri, the state where you farm in, as well as many other states in the Midwest, including my own Iowa, have made sure year-round access is available. What's the work being done to make that work nationally as well?
Well, this is something we've been pushing for a long time in Washington, D.C. And we thought we had an agreement on this in the reconciliation bill uh, back when Biden was still president, and it ended up getting dropped at the very last moment. And we're trying to get it, try to get it through with the, what Trump calls the one big beautiful bill, and it did not go through there. So we're trying to find other legislation to put it with and get this passed so that E15 can be utilized year round throughout the entire United States.
That's a perfect segue into my next question, which is some of the priorities for the National Corn Growers Association nationally, including the big, beautiful bill as well as reconciliation packages. What's going on there aside from E15 that's important for farmers?
Our number one priority at this point in time would be getting a farm bill passed. Farmers are wanting that certainty of what's going to happen to us in the future. We want to know what the safety nets are going to be in place for farmers. Of course, the number one thing there is we certainly want crop protection as far as crop insurance to be protected. But we also, one of the other things that we're really pushing for is enhancement of MAP and FMD funding. MAP is Market Assistance Program, and FMD is Foreign Market Developments. This is so that we can expand export markets for corn. I mean, we certainly have an international market with our commodities. And it's not just corn, but soybeans, wheat, uh, cotton, everything else, and we want to give our organizations the ability to go out and help market our programs, our products to other countries.
One of the concerns and conflicts going on nationally involves just some cuts to SNAP and Are there any concerns from the National Corn Growers Association about how that might make a farm bill a little bit more difficult, since that's one of the ways that Republicans and Democrats work together to try to pass something in a bipartisan manner, where you have uh, SNAP benefits as well as farm benefits kind of in one package?
Yes, that is most definitely a concern. I mean, we've always been told that a farm bill by itself would never pass Congress. And, it's a sad thing to say, but, there's just not that many legislators that have connections to the farm anymore. But, one thing I'm pretty sure of is everybody wants to eat every day. And we're certainly here to help provide that. And the SNAP program is a part with the nutrition out there is certainly a big part of that, and it's one thing that helps get the entire farm bill over the finish line.
Jay, are there any other federal priorities you all are working at with National Corn Growers?
Those would be the main. I mean, we're also working in regulatory environment. It's kind of scary some of the things that RFK Jr. is putting out there. But the Democrats are attacking us on the environmental issues as well. We certainly want to protect our crop protection tools that we have as far as the chemicals that we use and modern farming practices.
Jay, swapping out topics here. I know growers are wrapping up their planting and are now headed into the growing season, and there's some competition going on. I always like keeping an eye on that National Corn Yield Contest. Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
Yes, the entries have opened up for the corn yield contest. This is the 61st year of the contest. Entries are due by August 13th, and certainly gives off gives the corn producers the opportunity to show off their skills in their trade.
Absolutely. So we'll have to keep an eye on that as well. You mentioned open through August 13th, and folks can learn more at the National Corn Growers Association website. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct. You just go to ncga.com/get-involved/yield contest.
Perfect. Jay Schutte with the National Corn Growers Association, also a Missouri corn farmer. It was a pleasure speaking with you today. Thank you so much.
Thank you. The pleasure's all mine.
Thank you. You are listening to Farm Your Daily. We'll have more conversations on the way. But first, let's take a look at some of the closing numbers for the Tuesday marketplace. July corn up a quarter cent, 438.5. September rising 2 3/4, 423.5. Soybeans in July 7 1/4 cents stronger at 1040 3/4, with August 7 cents more at 1034 1/4. Soybean meal in July, 60 cents a ton in the green at $294.50. July wheat down 3 cents a bushel at $5.36, with September falling 2 3/4 at $5.50.5. In the livestock market close for Tuesday, June live cattle, 57 cents a hundredweight weaker at $215.97. August $1.25 lower at $209.75. August feeder cattle 52 cents weaker at $301.22, with September falling 47 cents at $300.42. In lean hogs, June down 62 cents a hundredweight at $100.22, with July falling 40 cents at $104.57 a hundredweight. That is the Tuesday market close. This is Farm Your Daily. And joining us on Farm Your Daily, we have Meaghan Anderson, ISU Extension field agronomist for Central Iowa. Meaghan, always good to have you on the program, and let's go over what you're seeing out in the fields, because it was a bit wet today, and yet you were still chomping around, weren't you?
Yeah, I was out in the field checking on some stuff for some events that we're having over the next couple weeks, and I got caught a little off guard by the rain going from sprinkles to some really heavy rainfall while I was out in the field, but I'm sure happy to see it, as I think a lot of other people are as well.
If there's one thing I've learned in even as being a reporter or a broadcaster when going to fields, always have a pair of muck boots in your trunk. That's kind of the need.
They were definitely in the trunk, but should have been on my feet.
Let's talk about some of the details of Central Iowa. What exactly is the crop looking like here now starting June?
Yeah, well, it really depends on which planting window people planted into, right? We had a good planting window, kind of from the crop insurance planting date there in early April up until fairly close to Easter. So the stuff planted closer to Easter looks a little bit tougher, or it did earlier, and it's starting to come out of it now. And then that stuff planted in May is quite a bit smaller, but really looks good overall, very even and nice early growth. And so those early planted like corn and soybean fields, soybeans are sort of at that V2 stage. They're just starting to really green up and fill in a little bit in the fields where they don't look quite so rough as they do when they first emerge out of the ground, and it takes a long time for them to come up. And the corn, that earliest planted corn is at V6 or so already, and so that's really nice to see, because that's really when we start to see the color even up in those fields, and we're about to enter a pretty rapid growth period for the corn plants. And so we'll see things start to fill in here pretty quick, but overall stuff I think looks pretty good, but there's definitely some unevenness in some fields, lots of random issues kind of happening out on the landscape. But I'm pretty pleased with the way things look overall in central Iowa.
Let's talk about some of those random issues. What are some of the calls you're fielding from our farmers there in central Iowa?
Primarily kind of in a few realms, right? So a little bit of nutrient issues showing up, either related to injury from things like anhydrous ammonia, or hearing about both some spring applied as well as some fall applied injury, which is not super surprising, just depends a little bit on how it was applied. And I think there may have been some equipment issues going on. Seeing quite a bit in the realm of herbicides, whether it be herbicide injury from the product that was intended to be applied in the field, something that hung up in the sprayer itself somewhere and ended up in the field when it wasn't supposed to be, or drift. Drift has been a really common thing this spring. And other than that, it's just been the environment. And so we went through that really tough time of being hot and dry in May. Got a lot of planting done, a lot of field work done, but then we got cool and wet. So we finally got our rain, but we turned off pretty cool, and it was just terribly windy during that period. And so we had a lot of corn and some soybeans coming out of that period, and they looked really rough. They got kind of wind whipped and blown around. And so a lot of questions about applying herbicides to plants like that had been through such a stressful period, and just what the implications were longer term about them being able to come out of some of that growth pattern that they were in.
We still have a few more weeks until we start talking about any sort of disease concerns, but is cool and wet weather right now a potential impactor or influencer on that here come next month?
It certainly is. Actually, we're not all that far off from the first find of tar spot that happened last year. I think that was about June 10th or so. That was the earliest we've ever found that tar spot here in Iowa, and that corn was probably V8 or so, V7, V8, V9, something like that. And so we're not too far off from that time frame, and certainly could see it show up early again this year. But I always like to tell people that even though it showed up really early, we found it earlier than we ever have. It kind of sat stagnant for a long time last summer in many fields. We could find it, but it didn't move very fast and spread through those fields to cause a big issue like it did the prior year. And so we certainly always want to be on the lookout for that. I'm going to trust that one crop scout here in central Iowa that he'll find it. And once he finds it, then I'll start looking for it, I think.
I'll be waiting for your social media, because that's where I always find the latest instance of weeds or disease. You always have a picture.
The easiest way to get that info out quick. So yeah, definitely on my social media is where you'll find the first news of some of that stuff.
Absolutely. Any insect pressure you've noticed yet here starting off the summertime?
You know, we definitely saw some probably a couple weeks ago or so, but I think things have quieted down a little bit, and it really wasn't that much as far as insect concern in fields, just a little bit of feeding on some soybeans and maybe a little bit of some leaf feeding on corn that never really turned out to cause much of an issue at all. I expect that within the next few weeks, we might hear about Japanese beetles out in soybean, or at least emerging in Iowa, and maybe getting some people's trees on their way to the soybean fields. We're likely to hear about rootworm hatch coming up in the next couple of weeks. Just depends a bit on what the weather is doing. And I heard somebody say earlier today on a phone call with me, they talked about the dreaded thistle caterpillars, which I don't expect to be an issue, but just, I'm worried about people speaking that kind of thing into existence. So there's always the chance that we run into something wacky like we have in the past, but hopefully we're just dealing with the same old insects we usually see.
Absolutely. I know the last couple of years there have been some small concerns about the insect pressure that was kind of creeping up from the south in our soybean plants because it was so hard to correct that.
Yeah, I think that there's definitely some soybean insects that are of concern, right? Like even in western Iowa. So I think Nebraska has already had their first emergence of soybean gall midge this year, and that has kind of made its way across the state. I don't know that we've seen emergence here yet in Iowa, but I know that they saw that I think late last week in Nebraska. And then some other insects that have come from the south or the west that we just don't know quite as much about and how they might affect Iowa crops or how widespread they are. Like even the decky stem borer, which is a later season issue, but something that I know we're monitoring closely for here in Iowa right now.
We are in June now, Meaghan, and that means that there's going to be all sorts of crop field days, sometimes even wheat field days as well, that ISU Extension will be hosting throughout the state. Is there any in particular that you're looking forward to here soon?
Yeah, absolutely. We're going to be doing actually a pasture walk on June 17th in the evening in Dallas County at the DMAC Dallas County Farm. I'm excited about that. It's always fun to get out and talk with people about managing weeds, soil fertility, and grazing out in pastures. So my colleague Chris Clark and I will be doing that, and we've got more information about that on an event page on our website. And then on July 2nd, which is a Wednesday, just a couple days before the 4th, we're going to host Dr. Wes Everman's first ISU Weed Science Field Day, and we're really excited about that to talk about weed management, especially in this year where weeds have been a major challenge already. They're getting ahead of our post-herbicide applications. I'm hearing about some survival of weeds after post-herbicide applications. And so I think that'll be a really great event on the 2nd of July to talk about what's working versus not working and what some of our new technologies are that we might have available to us to help.
That is June 17th you mentioned. What was the second date?
July 2nd.
And July 2nd. Those are two dates to watch out for here. ISU Extension field agronomist for Central Iowa, Meaghan Anderson, joining us. And Meaghan, what's the best way to take a look at some of that on the ISU Extension webpage or elsewhere?
Yeah, our website is crops.extension.iastate.edu, and people are always welcome to reach out to me. My phone number is 319-331-0058. And then, like you said, I post a lot of stuff on X online, and that is at MJ Anders, ANDERS 1.
MJ Anders 1. Perfect. Thanks so much, Meaghan, again for talking to us on Farm Here Daily. Really appreciate having you here.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Meaghan. This is Farm Here Daily, a field-forward podcast. Thank you so much for listening. Again, in order to continue to produce this type of local Iowa content, we would love to have you join our community. So send it over to your friends, follow the podcast, and take a look at our social media channel at Field Forward Pod. Additionally, you can find me on social media at Geiger Reports. You'd also see me on TV, WHO Channel 13, every weekday in their morning and noon hour programs. Again, I am your host, David Geiger, and I'll be back again tomorrow, everybody.